break. We want to talk about the legal implications. Bill Cosby's lawyer, Tom Mesereau, has been on the show a few times, and he's a friend of the show, and we've talked about cases. He obviously wasn't successful in his strategies. I want to talk a little bit about what happened in this trial. And at this time, as we often do, welcome a legal expert, and we have one of the best today to talk about the Bill Cosby trial. Paul I always screw up your name, and no one else does. I'm the only one, Paul. And last time you made fun of me, and I get so nervous. I'm here with Ed Alonso, and he's going to tell me to bring a duck out of his pants. And
it's true. Now we all know where it comes from. Thanks.
DerOhannesian. How did I do?
Very good.
DerOhannesian.
No, you do a good job. You do a good job.
Well, I try, but, Paul, you have been involved in so many high-profile trials, especially when it comes to sexual assaults, and you've been in the media. You're the go-to guy for a lot of the networks and the YNN, former assistant DA. Tell us about this trial. Why was this trial different from the last one where it was hung and we had a retrial?
I think one thing is the environment had changed both socially. I think the Me Too movement in the last year, the Harvey Weinstein allegations, I am seeing in my practice as well in society just almost a blanket acceptance of any accusation and a very large willingness to accept allegations now that may have been rejected before. So that's one thing. The second thing is this trial had 5 women coming in to say that they were abused by Cosby. And I think that's a fundamental change in terms of the proof at trial. It's very difficult, and I've seen very few. I've studied these cases when there's multiple victims. By multiple, I mean 3 or more, whether they're part of the indictment, whether they're additional witnesses that come in. And believe it or not, the exception to that statement is the case that Tom Mesereau did with Michael Jackson. The Michael Jackson case was an anomaly in terms of his very unusual ability to have gotten an acquittal in that case. So I think the multiple victims also were the other major factor. And I think another factor that got overlooked is this jury was not sequestered. The first trial took place in an area outside the community where the accusation allegedly occurred, and the jury was sequestered. And if you look at cases where defendants have been successful, like Casey Anthony, for example, you had a sequestered juror like O.J. Simpson. And I think that does protect the jury from outside influences. And unfortunately for Mr. Cosby, the media landscape here was very negative for him. So I think he didn't have any protection
Paul,
in terms of the jury.
I think you summed that up well. I think those 3 points are excellent, and it probably does explain the difference in the result. But you mentioned the Me Too movement. And, I love Tom. He's been on our show. We talk a lot. He's talked about the Michael Jackson trial. He's told me some of the secrets, how he prevailed. Do you question his strategy to characterize Andrea Constand as a gold digger or a con artist, or all of these things that kind of went against her, her essence, who she was in the midst of this Me Too movement?
I think you describe well the problem with the strategy, but I don't fault the strategy because there was not really a better alternative. I think he took the best alternative, and focusing on the money and the accusation of gold digging is one thing that the jury understood. He was very successful doing that in the Jackson case. I think it didn't resonate as well here. I think there was a little bit more disconnect between the financial motives of the witnesses.
Yeah, obviously,
and the money, and I think that was the problem. But I can't say that it was a bad strategy because I can't say that there was a better strategy that he
and that's an interesting point. Paul, we have to take a quick break, but I want to pick up on that point and talk about maybe what the future is with appeals. And I know Tom went on the news and talked about the, you haven't seen the last of this. We'll do that after the break.
Good.
Paul, let's get back to what we were talking about before the break, and I'm getting a little more serious now. Interestingly, and I agree with you, that perhaps Tom Mesereau had a difficult task, given the fact that 5 former 5 accusers, and were able to testify. And you talked about the cumulative effect on a jury of 5 people talking about it. What about the testimony about Bill taking testimony in the 70s and the Quaaludes, giving Quaaludes to people? Isn't that really damaging? And what kind of effect can that have on the jury's disposition?
I think that was very damaging testimony. And I think as a backdrop, I think that's why he almost got convicted on the first time, was testimony concerning the drugs. I think this time it was more powerful. There was more testimony about it. I think his admission about it was very damning. I think it was hard to explain away in 2018 and say, well, this was acceptable conduct back in the 1970s. I just think that was very devastating and also hurt the defense case.
So when you talk about the facts, you've made it clear that it was a very difficult mountain to climb for the defense in this case. However, shouldn't they have tried to look at what we call the legal loopholes or the technicalities to try and get them off? Because we often hear when the facts are against you, turn to the law. What was the situation here?
Well, actually, that's what they've done, and that's why I think the appeal is important. I think there's several issues, but the main one being this admission of the 5 women's testimony. I think they're well positioned to make a good attack on the admissibility of that testimony. I think sometimes the public doesn't understand that one of the jobs of a defense attorney is to lay the groundwork for a successful appeal.
Right.
If the verdict goes against you, and especially when it's coming in and you know that you're going to have this bad testimony. Hard for clients to understand it, but I do think there's a significant legal issue there. I think there's some others, but I think that's the main one that gives him a lot of traction. It isn't clear-cut. When such testimony starts to take over the trial and you hear more about other acts than the one that you're charged with,
right.
Courts have expressed a willingness to overturn cases when that happens. So I think that's where he was. I think that's where he was looking at the legal quote, loopholes or the legal issues, and kind of letting the prosecution and the judge make maybe mistakes that he could exploit later. I think he's right to say this is not the end of the case. He's got a lot to work with.
And
the problem with
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I think the problem, though, is the big issue is, will he be in jail? Can he stay out pending that appeal?
Yeah,
I think that's his biggest legal challenge right now, is being able to stay out. He won one on Thursday when the judge kept him out, at least until sentencing. Now, the next thing will be, can he stay out pending a resolution of that appeal?
Right.
Because that will be the next major battle, I think, legally.
And I want to talk about that in a minute because we have to let you go. But before we get to that, you make such interesting points about the legal arguments. As an attorney, do you think that Tom Mesereau, and he's a great one, was actually thinking about these prior acts, bringing them in through the testimony, and how he could appeal later and maybe tainting this trial, which would in effect throw out the conviction, having almost to start over again, which I can't imagine how they will.
Yeah. Well, I think, you were talking about magic earlier. I think that's the magic of lawyers. Sometimes you don't see what they're doing. You don't understand how what they're doing lays the groundwork for an ultimate successful result. There's many ways to win a case. The trial jury and the trial verdict is just one way. So I think he was. I think he's a very good lawyer. He's an excellent lawyer. I think he can see beyond the immediate problems in a case, and of course he wanted an acquittal. But I think he was looking down the road. And good lawyers can do that. They can do both at the same time.
And you really have to have ice in your veins when that occurs, because you have to be thinking on a whole different level. The public opinion is against you. We have the Me Too movement, which is very important. And I know, Tom is a very sensitive guy. I know him, and I know that he is sensitive to the Me Too movement. But at the same time, he's able to keep his eye on the ball and move forward. And I wouldn't count him out yet. Before that occurs, what about sentencing? What do you see in the sentencing issue?
I think he's got a lot to argue in terms of trying to mitigate in terms of his health, his age, as well as the tremendous good work that he's done. But he's looking at jail time. There's no way this judge is going to allow him to not get jail. And I think given his age, any jail time is going to be a significant jail sentence. Now, if it gets up into the 10 years category, then it's going to be clearly a life sentence.
Right.
So I do think he's facing problems when it comes to jail time, but he's got a lot to work with to try to mitigate it. The key will be staying out pending appeal.
What's your best estimate, 5 to 7 years?
That would be my estimate, in that range. I think the judge is going to probably go midway on it, which is still a very substantial sentence.
Indeed.
And again, he's going to have a lot of civil issues also to deal with. He's on a multi-front legal war right now.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, it's very sad, the fall from grace of Bill Cosby. Paul DerOhannesian, thank you for being with us again. Really enjoy your insight.
Thank you.
Concise and to the point. We'll have you back as this progresses and on maybe some other sexual assault trials. I know that you're very busy because of the issues that have come up over the last year. And it's not going to be I think it's going to stay in the public eye. That's for sure.
I agree.
All right, take care, Paul. Ed.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.